I walked into that conference room with my head held high. All the managers who once mocked me were now sitting at the long oak table, silent, staring. I walked past them in my tailored navy suit, heels clicking against the floor, and took my place at the head of the table. I was their new boss. Their jaws clenched. A few blinked like they'd seen a ghost, and I smiled. Not because I was trying to rub it in, but because the moment felt so much bigger than me. 90 days ago, they laughed behind my back. They called me the diversity hire. They rolled their eyes when I spoke, excluded me from meetings, left me out of group chats. I wasn't hired for my skills. They whispered I was a quota, and now they had no choice but to answer to me. But here's the thing. How I got here wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival, resilience, and one very unexpected twist. So how did it all start? Let me take you back. My name is Jasmine Taylor. I'm 29, black, and from Charlotte, North Carolina. I wear my natural curls in a twist out most days, love gold hoop earrings, and I've got a gap in my front teeth that I used to be insecure about, but now I see as my signature. I moved to Boston for this job. New city, fresh start. After 2 years of freelancing and side gigs, I finally landed what I thought was my dream role, project coordinator at a fast-growing tech company. I was so excited the day I got the offer. I called my mom, my best friend Mariah, even my college mentor. I felt like everything was finally lining up. What I didn't realize was that walking into that office would feel more like stepping into an old boys club. From day one, the energy was off. My team lead, Brian Keller, was a tall, heavy-set white guy in his mid-40s, with thinning hair, a permanent coffee stain on his shirt collar, and a way of looking right through me like I was invisible. He barely looked at me when he introduced himself. Most of the guys didn't say much. They nodded politely, but no one offered to show me around or explain the workflow. I brushed it off at first. Maybe they were just busy, but then came the first team meeting. I offered a suggestion about improving how we track deliverables. It was met with silence. Then 2 minutes later, a guy named Scott Harrington repeated the exact same idea, and everyone clapped like he was Einstein. Scott is your classic office bro, mid-30s, white, always wearing fitted polos, and never without a protein shake. He talks over people constantly and somehow always has a story about his college fraternity days. And of course, he's tight with Brian. I tried not to let it get to me. I kept showing up early, doing my job, even staying late to get ahead. But slowly I started noticing things. They left me off email threads. They scheduled impromptu meetings without me. One time I found out about a deadline change because someone in accounting accidentally copied me on an update. And the whispers. I'm not dumb. I heard them in the break room. She's here because of HR's new policy. They needed another woman on the team. DEI checkbox. That's all it is. The worst was when I walked past Nate, this wiry little dude with a permanent smirk and a man bun, and he fake whispered, "Shh, the diversity queen's coming." I laughed it off on the outside, but inside, I was breaking. At first I cried in the bathroom, quiet, shameful tears. I started questioning myself. Was I not good enough? Was I really just a token? But then something happened. One night I stayed late again. I was trying to fix a broken report that no one else had touched in weeks. While digging through the data, I realized the whole project was running on outdated metrics. I worked overnight and built a new dashboard from scratch, sent it to Brian before I left. The next morning, he presented it to leadership as his own. No credit, no mention of me. That was the moment something inside me flipped. I wasn't going to let this place break me. I started documenting everything. Every meeting, every contribution, every instance where someone dismissed or disrespected me. I copied myself on emails. I asked questions publicly, not privately. I built a quiet paper trail. Then I started talking to people in other departments, quietly, respectfully. Folks like Danielle from marketing, a tall black woman with locks and the sharpest cat-eye eyeliner you've ever seen. Or Kevin from ops, this quiet Asian guy with wireframe glasses and a heart of gold. I helped them solve problems, gave them insights, built tools that saved them time. Word spread slowly. About 2 months in, I got a calendar invite from Lily Ortega, assistant to our CTO, Mr. Gray. Lily's Puerto Rican, super organized, and somehow always knew when a fire was about to start. She said he wanted to meet me. I almost said no. I thought it was a mistake, but I went. And that meeting changed everything. Mr. Gray was a quiet black man in his 50s, with deep laugh lines and a calm energy that instantly put me at ease. He'd seen the dashboard I built. He knew Brian took credit, and he wasn't impressed. Said he'd been watching how my team treated me and wasn't happy. He asked me one question. If you had the authority, what would you change? I didn't hold back. I talked about accountability, communication, and making space for new voices. He nodded, took notes, and thanked me for being honest. The next week, Brian was moved to another division. The week after that, I got a promotion, interim team lead, and that's when the real tension started. Suddenly, the same people who dismissed me had to answer my emails, sit in meetings I ran, and explain why deadlines were slipping. They didn't like it. One afternoon, I caught Scott trying to delete comments from a shared doc where I had flagged his errors. I didn't call him out publicly, I just copied it, saved it, and attached it to my weekly report. Let's just say that didn't go well for him, but even as things got better professionally, it hurt. I didn't want to be the angry black woman, I didn't want to be seen as a threat, I just wanted to do my job well and be respected. There were days I still went home and cried. One Friday, I got a handwritten card from Lisa, our receptionist. Lisa was a middle-aged white woman with red curls and a Boston accent that could slice bread. She wrote, "I see how hard you work. You're making it easier for the next woman who walks through those doors." I kept that card in my drawer, read it when things got heavy. Then the real twist happened. 90 days in, the company reorganized. Our department merged with 2 others, and they announced a new manager role. Someone would oversee all project teams across divisions. Guess who got the job? Not Brian, not Scott, not even Dave. This cocky dude from the data team who thought wearing a smartwatch made him a genius. It was me. When I walked into that room and saw their faces, it wasn't about payback anymore. It was about peace. I wasn't there to destroy them. I was there to lead. And I made a decision, one they didn't expect. But I'll tell you what I did in that meeting in Chapter 2. Let me just say, it shocked everyone in the room, even me. So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you lead with compassion or let them taste their own medicine? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, Part 2 is coming up. Stay tuned. The silence in that conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every face I'd once had to quietly answer to was now turned toward me, waiting. Some had their arms crossed. Others had this fake smile thing going on, like they were trying to pretend this wasn't the most awkward moment of their careers. I stood there looking at each of them. Brian Keller, displaced and demoted, sat in the back corner of the room, pretending to take notes. His comb-over looked extra stressed that day. He wouldn't make eye contact. Scott Harrington leaned back in his chair, arms stretched out like he owned the place. That smug smirk was still there, but it was twitching a little now. Good. Then there was Amanda Chu. Amanda was the one I didn't expect to feel disappointed by. Asian American, mid-30s, petite, always wore these cream-colored blazers like she was going to a brunch instead of work. She was the first person I talked to during orientation. We grabbed lunch that first week. She told me to stick with her and said we needed more women supporting each other on the floor. I believed her, but I'd come to realize that Amanda was just as much a part of the problem, only quieter about it. She wasn't outright cruel like the others. She was subtle. She watched me get ignored in meetings and said nothing. She nodded at the jokes. She laughed when Scott did his HR bingo bit every time I spoke up. So when I said, "I know some of you didn't expect to see me in this seat," I was looking right at her. "I've heard the comments," I said, scanning the room slowly. I felt the isolation. I know what was said when people thought I wasn't listening. A few people shifted in their chairs. Nate, the wiry guy with the man bun who always had a sarcastic remark, cleared his throat and looked at the ceiling. Amanda blinked fast, like she was thinking about how not to react. "But I'm not here to talk about that today," I continued. "I'm here because this team is capable of more, and if you'll give me the chance, I'll prove that we can do better together." You could hear a pin drop. I paused, then walked over to the front of the room where the whiteboard was. What they didn't know was that I had spent my weekend building a new workflow structure from scratch. I'd gone through every missed deadline, every complaint, every project that had gone off the rails under Brian's leadership, and created a new system. I drew it out. Team pods, weekly syncs, shared documentation. Everyone would be accountable, including me. "We're removing the bottlenecks," I said. "No more backroom decisions. Everyone's going to know where projects stand, and more importantly, who's actually doing the work." Then I did something they really didn't expect. I opened the floor for suggestions. And that's when Scott Harrington spoke. Of course it was Scott, not to, throw shade or anything, he said, tilting his chair back with that annoying little smirk. "But don't you think this feels a little micromanagey? I mean, you want us to post updates every Friday now?" I smiled. "Scott, you missed 2 deadlines last quarter because no one could find your files." He went quiet. If transparency feels like micromanaging, maybe the problem isn't the system. The air got tight. A few people stifled grins. Kevin from Ops, tall Korean guy, glasses, always polite, looked like he wanted to high-five me but didn't dare. Amanda raised her hand next. "This all sounds good in theory," she said, carefully. "But honestly, we've had people try to fix things before. It usually just ends up being more meetings." I nodded. "Fair point. That's why I'm cutting our Monday check-ins in half. They'll be 30 minutes. Strict agenda. You'll get your time back if you stick to the process." After the meeting, a few people trickled out quickly. Scott didn't say a word. Nate gave me a nod that I couldn't quite read. But Amanda lingered. She walked up to me and said, "That was impressive. You handled that better than I expected." Better than she expected. I smiled and said, "Thanks. I guess I've had a lot of practice being underestimated." She nodded awkwardly and left. That night, I felt something shift. I wasn't scared anymore, but I wasn't celebrating yet either. The resistance didn't disappear overnight. Scott continued with his passive-aggressive behavior. He'd accidentally miss deadlines, then throw out excuses in meetings about how things weren't clear. Nate would make jokes during calls, little digs that tried to paint me as too serious or too demanding. And Amanda, she became cold, formal, like I'd broken some invisible code by rising above her. But still, the work was getting better. People were communicating more. Teams were meeting goals. Even Lisa, the receptionist, told me that folks seemed less tense walking into the office. Then one morning, I got a Slack message from Lily Ortega. "Hey, Mr. Gray wants to see you ASAP." My stomach dropped. Did I mess up? When I walked into Mr. Gray's office, he waved me in with a smile. "Shut the door." He motioned for me to sit. "I've got some news," he said, "and I need your input before we make it public." Apparently, the company was expanding. We were acquiring a smaller tech firm, and leadership wanted someone from our department to lead the integration project, liaising between both teams, handling the transition. "And I recommended you," he said flatly. I blinked. "Me? You've got the clarity and the backbone and the patience, which frankly is harder to teach." I wanted to cry, but instead I smiled and said, "I won't let you down." That afternoon, I drafted an outline for the integration plan. I worked late, again, and I stayed focused until I got an email I wasn't supposed to see. A forwarded thread. Subject line, "RE Jasmine's promotion." Sent by Amanda. Accidentally copied me. And what I read, it shook me. Not because it was cruel, but because of what it revealed about her. She wasn't just complicit. She was leading the whispers. But I'll tell you exactly what she said in Chapter 3. You won't believe the kind of betrayal I found in her words. So let me ask you this. Have you ever trusted someone only to realize they were smiling to your face and stabbing you in the back? What would you do if you saw proof? Would you confront them or let karma do its thing? Chapter 3. The moment I saw my name in that forwarded email thread, my chest got tight. Subject line, Jasmine's promotion. Sender, Amanda Chu. Yes, that Amanda. My orientation buddy. The woman who once told me we needed more women in leadership. The same woman who clapped for me in meetings but stayed silent when the guys talked over me. She had accidentally copied me on a message she meant for her little inner circle. And the contents, Amanda had written, "Look, I'm not trying to be negative, but Jasmine getting promoted this fast is wild. Like, I'm all for diversity and whatever, but is she really leadership material? I've heard from a few people she's kind of hard to work with. And did she really earn it? Or is this just the company overcorrecting? Just saying what everyone's thinking?" She even threw in a laughing emoji, a laughing emoji. I felt like I'd been punched. Not because of the words, I'd heard worse, but because they came from her. Amanda, who smiled at me in the hallway. Amanda, who asked for my advice on project timelines. Amanda, who told me she admired my confidence. Turns out she admired it just enough to resent it. I sat there staring at the screen, heart racing, mind buzzing. I knew better than to respond right away. That's how they get you, emotional, impulsive. So I walked around the office, around the block. I texted Mariah, my best friend from back home. Amanda backstabbed me. She texted back immediately, "Girl, I told you, trust your gut." That night I went home, turned off my phone and let myself cry. I mean ugly cry. Snot, pillow punching, full body grief. Not just for the betrayal, but because for the first time in weeks, I had actually started to believe I belonged. That email, it shook that belief, but not for long. The next morning, I forwarded the email thread to HR. No commentary, no emotion, just accidentally copied, flagging for your awareness. Then I went about my day like nothing had happened. But I didn't forget, and I didn't forgive. Over the next week, Amanda started acting twitchy. She was overly nice in meetings, too quick to agree. She even brought in homemade lemon bars and offered me one. I took one, smiled, and tossed it in the trash when she turned around. Now here's where it gets wild. About 2 weeks later, we had a cross-team sync. It was the first time I was leading the call with both the old team and the new staff from the company we acquired. The new team was led by a woman named Tasha Miller. Tasha was everything Amanda wasn't. Open, direct, warm. Black woman in her early 40s with the kind of voice that made everyone stop and listen. She had a background in crisis project management, and people respected her immediately. As we did intros, I noticed Amanda kept interrupting, jumping in to clarify things I'd already explained, adding comments like, "Well, I guess Jasmine's still figuring out the new workflow." Tasha raised an eyebrow. After the meeting, Tasha messaged me privately. Was that shade? Or am I imagining things? I laughed. Then I sent her the email thread. She didn't reply for a whole hour. Then she wrote, "Say less. I've got you." I didn't know what she meant, but I found out a few days later. Turns out, Amanda had been eyeing a lateral move to the integration team. Tasha was involved in the selection process. Guess who didn't get the role? Yep, Amanda. I wasn't even asked for input, but I didn't have to say a word. That's the funny thing about karma. It always finds its way. Amanda didn't know I saw the rejection email, but I could tell her energy changed. She avoided eye contact, stopped coming to our weekly syncs due to scheduling conflicts, and slowly faded into the background. Scott noticed. He cornered me in the break room one morning, holding his usual protein shake, and said, "So did you take Amanda out behind the woodshed or something?" I looked at him, deadpan. "Nope, she did that all by herself." He raised his brows and muttered, "Damn." I walked away, and for the first time I felt not vindicated, not victorious, just grounded, like I no longer needed to defend my place in the room. Because here's the truth, I didn't get here by accident. I got here because I showed up, worked hard, and refused to disappear, even when they made it clear I wasn't wanted. But the story doesn't end there, because right as I was getting comfortable, another storm was brewing, and this time it came from the top. Remember Mr. Gray, the CTO who believed in me? He was about to make a decision that would flip everything upside down, again. And this time, I had to choose between protecting myself or standing up for someone else who reminded me of, well, me. But I'll tell you what happened in Chapter 4. Let's just say I had to ask myself, when you finally earn your seat at the table, do you pull up another chair or protect your spot? What do you think? Should I have confronted Amanda directly? Would you have forgiven her? Or would you have exposed her publicly? Tell me in the comments. Chapter 4 is going to test everything I thought I'd learned. Stay close. Chapter 4. It started with a calendar invite. Subject, Strategy Review, Confidential, from Mr. Gray. Time, Friday, 9 a.m. Location, Executive Conference Room A. No other guests listed. When I saw it, my stomach turned. I hadn't done anything wrong, but something about a meeting with that title, that location, and that level of secrecy, it didn't feel casual. Friday morning came. I walked in, laptop in hand, and Mr. Gray was already there, standing by the window with his arms crossed, his signature quiet intensity filling the room. He motioned for me to sit. Then he got right to it. "We're hiring someone new," he said. "You'll be managing them directly." I blinked. "Okay, anyone I know?" He nodded. "Her name's Brianna," and just hearing that name, I already knew. Brianna Knight, fresh out of grad school. I met her months ago during an internal workshop I helped run for interns and junior hires. Tall, dark skin like mine, soft-spoken, always wore cardigans that looked 2 sizes too big. I remembered how nervous she'd been during our group exercise, but also how sharp her ideas were once she got going. And now, she was being hired as my junior analyst. "I wanted your blessing before finalizing it," Mr. Gray said, "because I know exactly how this could look to some folks." And I did too. Another black woman joining our team? They'd say what they always say. Whisper behind closed doors. Jasmine's building her little club. 2 DEI hires in the same department? Is this HR's new quota program? I sighed. "She's talented," I said. "She'll need support. You're the right one to give it," he said simply. I agreed. Of course I did. I wasn't about to become the kind of leader who pulls the ladder up behind her. I remembered how alone I felt when I started. I swore I wouldn't let another woman go through that if I could help it. But the moment the announcement went out, the reaction started. Scott Harrington, as usual, couldn't keep his mouth shut. In our team group chat, he wrote, "Welcome, Brianna. Looks like Jasmine's cloning herself. #squad goals." Amanda, who was still laying low after the email debacle, liked the message with a thumbs up emoji. Brianna replied kindly, said she was excited to join and learn. But I saw her face when we met for coffee that afternoon. She was anxious. "I feel like I'm walking into something," she said, holding her cup with both hands, "like I'm being watched." I nodded. "You are." She looked up, startled. "But not because of anything you've done," I added. "It's because people are uncomfortable with change, and you represent the future, not the past." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she whispered, "I don't want to make you look bad." And that broke me a little, because I remembered thinking the exact same thing when I started, worried that just existing would be seen as a favor or a threat, that my presence might ruin someone else's illusion of what the workplace was supposed to look like. "No one can make me look bad," I said firmly, "least of all you." Over the next few weeks, I kept a close eye on how the team treated her. At first, people were fake nice, overly polite, inviting her to meetings that didn't matter just to include her. But gradually the cracks showed. Nate, the sarcastic one, started making little comments during stand-ups like, "Let's wait for Brianna's take. She's the boss's new favorite, right?" Scott would interrupt her mid-sentence, pretending he thought she was finished. Amanda stayed mostly quiet, but her eyes said everything. Every time Brianna spoke, Amanda's lips would press into a tight line like she was chewing on something bitter. I coached Brianna through it, told her not to shrink, gave her tips, rehearsed her first big presentation with her until midnight one Thursday, and she nailed it. We were reviewing a high-priority integration project that had stalled. Brianna built a model that showed how reallocating just 2 engineers could shave 3 weeks off the timeline. When she presented, even Kevin from Ops nodded and said, "That's solid." But after the call, Scott muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Wow, Jasmine's really teaching her how to work the room." And that was my limit. I called a meeting, no agenda, no slides, just me, the team, and one very clear purpose. "I'm noticing a pattern," I began, "and I think it's time we talk about it." People shifted in their chairs. I've worked hard to build a space where people can contribute freely without fear of being ignored, mocked, or minimized. I looked directly at Scott, then Amanda, then Nate, and I'm not going to tolerate a culture where someone new, someone talented, feels like they have to earn your basic respect. Silence. Amanda cleared her throat. "No one's being disrespectful. Maybe she's just..." "You think calling someone a clone and mocking their relationships is just banter?" She looked away. Nate chuckled nervously. "I think we're all just adjusting to the new vibe." I smiled. "Then let's adjust quickly." Then I did something bold. I gave Brianna the lead on our next flagship project. She would be running point, with me backing her up, but the voice, the face, and the direction. You could practically hear the teeth grinding across the table. But guess what? She crushed it. Her solution saved the company $80,000 in resource shifts. The VP of Engineering praised her directly in the follow-up meeting. Even Mr. Gray gave her a shout-out in his monthly report. And me, I didn't say a word. I just watched them, every last one of them, realize that her presence didn't lower the bar. She was the bar. But this story doesn't wrap up with applause. Because one person, they weren't done. Amanda may have gone quiet, but behind the scenes, she was setting me up for something I never saw coming, and I didn't find out until it was almost too late. What was she planning? Well, I'll tell you everything in Chapter 5. Trust me, this one nearly ended my career. Would you have protected Brianna the way I did? Have you ever been in a position where helping someone else made you a target? Tell me in the comments. Chapter 5 is coming next, and it's where everything almost unraveled. Chapter 5, started with a file. A simple, boring, unassuming spreadsheet labeled Q2 Resource Allocation Revised. It was dropped into our shared folder late on a Sunday night. No message, no alert, just sitting there, waiting. At first glance, nothing seemed off, until Kevin from Ops messaged me Monday morning. "Hey, why is your name listed under manager approval for the contractor overages?" I blinked. What overages? I pulled up the spreadsheet. Buried in the third tab, under a bunch of rolled-up subtotals, was a line item for an unauthorized expense. $24,000 in contractor payments for a project I never touched. And right next to it, in bold, approved by Jasmine Taylor. But here's the problem. I never approved it, and I sure as hell didn't know about those charges. My heart started pounding. I double-checked the audit logs. That version of the spreadsheet had been uploaded under Amanda's credentials. At that point, I was hoping it was just an error. Maybe she meant to save a draft. Maybe it was copied and pasted by mistake. Maybe it was someone else's template, and she didn't clean it up. But my gut told me otherwise. Amanda Chu wasn't careless. She was calculated. And this felt personal. By lunchtime, the whispers had started. Did you see that file? Was she funneling contractors? Who approved this? HR hadn't called yet, but I could feel it coming. The tension, the looks, the smell of suspicion hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. And I'll be real with you, my first instinct was to panic. Because let's be honest, when you're a black woman in a leadership position, the benefit of the doubt is a luxury you're rarely afforded. One mistake, one perceived misstep, and the entire ladder you climbed can crumble beneath you. But I had receipts. I opened my just-in-case folder, the one I'd started keeping after my first week on the job. Meeting notes, email confirmations, approval chains. I scrolled fast. My hands were shaking. And then there it was, an old Slack message from Amanda dated 5 weeks ago. "Hey, I'm running late on the final Q2 doc. Can I just use your name on the template for now and swap it later?" I had responded, No, I need to review before anything gets my signature. Boom, evidence. I screenshotted it along with the file metadata and sent it to Mr. Gray with a subject line that just said, urgent approval discrepancy. 20 minutes later, I got a reply, meet me in conference room 2, bring your files. By the time I got there, HR was already in the room. Amanda was there too, sitting calmly, legs crossed, wearing a peach blouse and that same unreadable expression she always wore when she was bluffing. Mr. Gray gestured for me to sit. Then he turned to Amanda. Can you explain how Jasmine's name ended up in the Q2 document approving unauthorized funds? Amanda didn't flinch. It was just a draft. I didn't think it would get circulated. I was rushing, and I used her name as a placeholder. I spoke calmly. Except you never told me. And I told you, in writing, not to do that. I slid the printouts across the table. She scanned them. Her face didn't change, but Mr. Gray's did. Why wasn't this flagged earlier? He asked HR. They shrugged. We're looking into it now. But this clears Jasmine. Amanda tried one last trick. She sighed, soft and dramatic. I just didn't think it was a big deal. We've all reused templates before. This feels like an overreaction. I looked her straight in the eyes. You didn't just reuse a template. You faked an approval. That's not a mistake. That's sabotage. The room fell silent. HR asked Amanda to step out for a moment. Mr. Gray turned to me. You okay? He asked. I wasn't, but I nodded. Later that afternoon, Amanda was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. She never came back. The official report said it was a breach of protocol, but everyone in the office knew the truth. She tried to take me down, and she failed. The fallout rippled through the company. People started asking real questions about culture, bias, and leadership. HR rolled out new checks on project files. Mr. Gray put me on the task force to help reform onboarding and ethical standards. But the biggest shift? Brianna, watching me stand up to Amanda, gave her a kind of quiet fire. She started speaking up more, taking risks, leading. One day, I caught her mentoring a new intern, giving her the same advice I'd once given Brianna. I didn't interrupt. I just smiled, because that's how change happens. One voice, then another, and me. I kept going, wiser, tougher, but not bitter, because what Amanda taught me, without meaning to, is that power doesn't protect you from betrayal. So here we are, 5 chapters in. I walked into this job thinking I had to prove myself, but what I learned was that my worth was never up for debate, and my revenge, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was leading with excellence when they expected me to fail. And now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have kept that Slack message? Would you have stayed quiet or gone public? Let me know in the comments. And if you think that's the end of the story, think again, because just when I thought I'd earned peace, a new executive joined the company, and let's just say he brought a whole new kind of trouble. Want to know what happened next? Stick around for Chapter 6. Chapter 6. His name was Chase Montgomery. Yeah, that kind of name. The kind that sounds like he owns yachts and always gets the VIP table at some rooftop bar in Manhattan. Tall, white, early 40s, navy suits that probably cost more than my rent. Perfect teeth, hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a political campaign. The kind of man who always walked like he expected applause. He joined as the new senior VP of strategy. And the moment I met him, I knew exactly what kind of storm he would be. We were introduced during a leadership mixer. Everyone was standing around in the rooftop lounge of the downtown office, sipping wine and smiling fake smiles. When I shook his hand and introduced myself, he said, "Ah, Jasmine, the trailblazer, right? I've heard all about you." The way he said it didn't feel like a compliment. It felt loaded, like I was a headline, or worse, a rumor. Still, I kept it professional. "Hope it was the good kind," I said with a smile. He chuckled. "Depends who you ask." Right then, I knew this man had done his homework, and I wasn't the kind of leader he was used to working with or respecting. Over the next few weeks, Chase made his presence known. He started restructuring teams, poking into projects that weren't under his purview, making sweeping statements in meetings like, "We need more high-performance culture, less emotion, more execution." Translation: he thought we were too soft, and by we, I mean people like me, women, people of color, anyone who didn't bow down to his outdated idea of leadership. At first, I tried to stay out of his way, but it didn't work, because soon he called me into a meeting, just the two of us. He sat across from me in the glass conference room, fingers steepled like some TV villain. "You've done impressive work here," he said. "Thank you," I replied cautiously. Then came the follow-up. But I think you've hit your ceiling. I stared at him. Excuse me. Look, Jasmine, don't take it the wrong way. You've made waves. But if we're scaling this company, we need people who think bigger, who can command a room. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was doing me a favor. Sometimes, strong personalities make others uncomfortable. It's not fair, but it's reality. That's when I realized he was trying to edge me out, not fire me. No, just demote me quietly, freeze me out, reassign my projects, strip me of visibility until I either stepped down or faded into irrelevance. I didn't say much in that moment. I just nodded and walked out, but I knew exactly what to do. I started documenting everything, again, every time he rerouted a project without explanation, every time he left me off critical meetings, every time he forwarded one of my proposals with his own name on it. And I wasn't the only one watching. Brianna saw it. Tasha Miller, the manager from the acquired company, saw it too. She pulled me aside one day and said, "He's doing to you what they tried to do to me at my old job. Keep your receipts." I did, but I also did something else. I started building alliances, quietly, with people in finance, with the DEI team, with senior women leaders who had been through these storms before. We started talking, comparing notes. Turns out Chase had a pattern. He'd done similar things at 2 other companies, quietly edged out powerful women, especially women of color, not with overt discrimination, but with strategic sidelining, whisper campaigns, and passive-aggressive sabotage, the kind of behavior that's hard to prove unless you have patterns. So I built a case, not just mine, everyone's. By the time I brought it to Mr. Gray, I had a folder the size of a phone book. He didn't say much when he saw it, just looked at me and asked, "Are you ready for what this might turn into?" I nodded. "Then I'll take it from here." What happened next moved fast. The board got involved. HR launched an investigation, and while it played out, Chase did what power-hungry people always do when cornered. He got louder. He started calling me aggressive in emails. He questioned my work ethic. He even tried to paint my team as disruptive to company culture. But here's what he didn't count on. People backed me up. Tasha, Kevin, Brianna, even Lisa from the front desk wrote a statement about how she'd overheard Chase mocking me in the elevator, calling me the company's DEI poster girl. It wasn't long before the writing was on the wall. 2 weeks later, an internal memo announced that Chase Montgomery would be pursuing new opportunities outside the company. And just like that, he was gone. No party, no LinkedIn post, just silence. But me, I stayed. Not just as the department head, but now as a trusted advisor to the executive board. They saw what I did, how I fought, not just for myself, but for the people coming after me. They asked me to help shape the next phase of the company's leadership training, and I said yes, because now I wasn't just surviving. I was shaping the space, building something real, and empowering voices that used to be pushed into corners. Brianna is now managing her own team. Kevin got promoted to lead ops coordinator. And me? Well, let's just say there's a seat at the boardroom table with my name on it. But let me be clear, this isn't just my story. It's a story about what happens when someone refuses to shrink, when someone chooses grace over bitterness and impact over ego. So tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone in power? Have you ever been underestimated? Then flip the script. Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more stories like this, then stick around. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more juicy and drama-filled contents, like our next story. It's about a woman who caught her husband living a double life, using her name, and how she turned that betrayal into $1 million business. You don't want to miss it.